I guess we can get started and get the rest of the people start coming on in. First, I want to welcome everybody on behalf of Afrodescendant Nation. This is a discussion on, or rather, a conversation on the slander of Black men in high places in the diaspora. Obviously, the diaspora is not just North America. It is also South America and the Caribbean, as well as Africa and the European nations. We're going to focus tonight on North America. We will bring in some of the Caribbean through our history so we can understand how we've gotten here. It is extremely impossible to start such a conversation and not bring history and to understand how we got here, to not deal with things in a hyperbole manner as of today. So the things we're going to discuss tonight, statistics and context, mass incarceration. The highest statistics showing that the disproportionate rates of incarceration among Black men. For example, Black men are increased at 5 times more than white men. Also, we want to discuss the impacts on the families and communities of this mass incarceration. Also, we're going to deal with cancel culture. We're going to examine how cancel culture disproportionately affects Black men, particularly those in high-profile positions. And 2, share examples of public figures who face backlash for expressing dissenting opinions or engaging in activism. And also stereotypes. We're going to discuss the pervasive stereotypes surrounding Black masculinity, especially the portrayal of Black men as aggressive or untrustworthy. Also, we're going to explore how these stereotypes affect public perception and the opportunities available to Black men. So we're going to start off with first dealing with the incarceration and the 5 times more than the Caucasian counterpart. And of course, it would be even lower when it comes to any other community in North America, as these are the 2 largest communities. So on our first question for tonight, gentlemen, whoever wants to take it first, what do you believe are the reasons that we are incarcerated at such a higher rate than any other community?
I'll go first. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, the answer in one way is simple, but it's also complex. And I'm speaking from America, from the United States of America. It's their way of keeping us slaves to this system. And the 13th Amendment basically tells you that when you read it. It's one of the simplest amendments when you read it. Their ability to criminalize our behavior is what leads us back to be slaves for their system. And in one way, it's just that simple.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in on the reason that we are being 5 times more incarcerated than any other community?
You know, I place it. I want to start from first from the context that we are people who are warred upon. I think that's the context I would like to frame. You know, and that we've been warred upon from our beginning in this, and the incarceration process, or in relationship to extract labor over, especially Black men, has been an integral part of the legal process as a means of just disciplining or containing, right? But I think that in relationship to the 5 times at this period, I want to place it from the period of Ronald Reagan. Because I think, if we place it in me placing it in the context of Ronald Reagan, we know that Reagan, one of the major things that he started was because of the fear of Black men demonstrating, and in California, in Oakland, in the organization of, specifically of the Panthers and the growth of Black men, taking control of the agency of their identity, their political and their identity and their territory and protecting their environment. That was a threat. And from that point on, there's been a major push to contain that momentum of self-organizing as Black men who are taking control, or I call sovereign thinking, in that moment of time. And we can, I guess as the discussion go on, we can, add other layers to how this war campaign that they imposed and how that number got to increase by the 90s, in the 80s and 90s.
So let me, now we got a couple of more people in. Let me announce who we have on the panel thus far. We have Mr. Kenneth Canty. We have Mr. Shahid Ali, who's running our engineering for us on this. Mr. Lloyd Ford has just come in and just speaking with Mr. Bobby Worth. And I believe that Akoti Speaks, the organizer of this, is in, and Mr. Richard. I'm sorry, Mr. Richard, I didn't get your last name.
It's White, but I'm representing Time for Awakening, the internet radio program.
Awesome. So to kind of piggyback on what both gentlemen said, Mr. Canty is Richard, I believe that was speaking. No, Mr. Bobby that was just speaking. Our 5 times incarceration is due to the industrial capitalism system that we're a part of. We came out of Jim Crow. We came out.
You went on mute.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Back on mute.
1, 2, 1, 2. So coming out of slavery and the Jim Crow, they changed our democracy, or so-called the way that we were paid, and turned it into minimum wage. That created a void in labor for the industrial complex we know as United States. And in that, in the Constitution, it states that if you are convicted of a crime, that you are able to go back into slavery. So we must understand that that was a pivotal time when this Constitution was written, when we were coming out of slavery, and we were now trying to be employed, and they gave us minimum wage, and they said that if you are incarcerated, then you are free labor again, so that you can continue to build the nation off of free labor. So I want to definitely highlight that that was a major aspect of why we are getting 5 times incarcerated. Also, just as a historical reference, the first time a job was given in history was when the Egyptians gave it to the Hebrews, because they felt that they were overpopulating in Goshen, and they wanted to devise a way to slow their population. So they came up with a scheme of war and said that they needed to protect the walls and the areas of Egypt, and they got us to work with them to build these walls, and then slowly they retreated from working with us and were just paying us on a weekly, and that was an effort to stop our population growth. It did not work, so of course they went into other things. So understanding that work and labor and working for a system or government has never been for the people, so to speak. It has been a slave, so to speak, scenario. And as Mr. Bobby brought up as well, the incarceration is used as a containment. We would like to use the word social engineering. From the prison systems, the pipeline to prison systems from high schools to prisons have given us a strange fruit in the sense that we make it a badge of honor to have gone to jail. We make it seem as though a person has achieved a certain status as either bravado or being brave enough to go against the system or doing it themselves. We have turned our incarceration and this systematic incarceration into a pride thing that has then led into music, into our communities, and has been a social engineering. So I believe that that is a major part as well, as Mr. Bobby brought up, in reference to the containment of our community through the enslavement of prison. So, Mr. Ford, as you just came in, would you like to add anything to this?
I mean, you said a whole mouthful, so I won't even try to follow up with that. But I think these days we kind of, especially black men, I think at the same time as we having a hard time, I think we lack from a sense of direction and kind of finding our place in the world and what we're trying to do. And I think as, I don't know, you know, I'm a millennial, I'm 36 years old, so I know a lot of people in my generation, we felt like, you know, we was told, you know, go to college, go to school, get an education, get a good job. And we realized that that necessary scenario didn't benefit majority of us, you know, in a way that we thought it would. And I think through that scenario and through that molding is how some of us got to the place we are now, as in the activism and seeing what it is. And I told somebody the other day, you know, as in joking, I said, man, they could have diffused one hell of an activist if they just would have paid me, you know, and because I think through that, not getting paid, not getting what you feel like you deserve and you working for will have you start to not just challenge the system in a way of thinking, but also challenge, you know, your own way of thinking and your own way of what you thought success was. So, you know, I feel like that's something that we battle as a millennial, and what we're trying to go through and how do we overcome those and how do we find our place in this nation and still be successful, as well as keeping our groundedness to the grassroots and the people.
May I address something Brother Ford said?
Please do.
You reminded me of something. An associate of mine I work with in DC told me, you know, Ken, where they messed up on you is they screwed you so bad they made you an activist. And when I go back and look back at the progression, I think there might be some time to talk about some personal stories later. But each time it kept getting worse and worse as I grew in my business. And when it got to 2020, it got so bad that it made me who I am today. And that's another story. And I said, man, if y'all had just paid me what you owed me, which was like nothing in the grand scheme of things, it was a lot to me and my employees and my family, but you wouldn't have gotten this monster you created, you know. But then you have to think, well, why did they do it in the first place? And it goes back to your original question, Brother Jones. They want to push us all to slavery, whether it's physical slavery, mental slavery, spiritual slavery. And sometimes having a job is perfectly fine and such, but sometimes they just want your nose down and you just go be a consumer and you just be plugged into the matrix and you just say, well, you know, you look at something wrong, you say, well, that's not my problem. I'll just keep going forward and buy my depreciating asset at the car lot or watch this football game that doesn't really mean anything, and I just keep it moving. And while these people are holding us down with their foot, but it's really their toe because we're holding ourselves down because we believe in that fairy tale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, the second part of our question was going to be, what was the impact of this incarceration on our community? But you guys are touching on it to the point that I want to, because we bring up the fact of how it has tried to control us in the containment, but then also, as Mr. Ford has brought out, and Kenty has supported, that it's made activists out of some. So now my new question is, in this 2024, with all that's happening, regardless of before, do you believe that it is made more activism in this hour, or is it bringing more people to sleep?
I would say this is definitely not bringing, it's bringing more activists, but not more than the complacency of people, because I think with so much information nowadays with social media and the internet, I think people just don't know what to do. So in that confusion of information overload, they just kind of do nothing. And it's like so much information out there that most people don't know what's the truth, what's a lie. At the end of the day, what's progressive, what's solution, what's not, Democrat, Republican, it's so much information in a normal person. And I tell this to everybody, when I used to have, I still have community meetings, and let's just say 40 to 70 people come to a month. Only about 2 people can even tell me who their city council person is. So, and those are the people that want to get involved. So what do we think the information level of the people that's just sitting at home? Most of them, we talking about the presidency and voting right now, but the person that's making decisions on their political and their economic and their social lives live right in their own zip codes. And yet we don't know who they are in majority. So I think it goes beyond just politics, but like Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. And until that light switch, guess what? Before, like I say, my man Kenny, and before all of us jumped into that mindset, think about before you was in that mindset, who could have just gave you so much information that you would have flipped it on that way? I don't think none of us get it that way. It's like through personal strife or personal experiences that makes you want to flip on that switch for yourself. And I think we have figured out the lever that helps people switch it on for themselves. And like you say, jail has been a big component of that. Life has been a big component of that. And sometimes just through those circumstances, but I don't even just think it's prison or just life all the time. I think sometimes it's that time that you have to think into yourself, where you can really kind of decipher what life is or what you feel you should be doing. But I think it all stands in purpose.
One thing that and I wanted to pick up on the question you didn't ask, but also in not knowing what to do, because I guess I'm framing again the crack era created the greatest destabilization within our community. It created the greatest moment of incarceration amongst Black men in our community. And because of that, it destabilized the family, and because it destabilized the family formation. And again, this was because of the onslaught of destabilizing the organizers who were organizing the community. That destabilization happened first. They were considered political prisoners. They were, operating to develop the community, and they came after them. And then something were injected, right, into the community, which created another level for another generation of destabilization, right? And in doing that, what's happening now, I would say, that people don't know what, it's still trying, we're as men, we're still, even generationally, we're still trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, as organizers, as men, as family men, and knowing the condition that we're wrestling with, as entrepreneurs, as just trying to get a job, just trying to develop skills, trying to move in this environment, from that destabilization. And we never had a time to really, because the prison system didn't provide an opportunity of reflection. Matter of fact, it started taking the resources that people were using out of the system that were helping them develop so they can come back, as you used to say, come back to the world, right? So I'm arguing all of those things are the reason why it's not that we have less organizers. It's just that people, especially Black men, we're not clear what are we supposed to be doing right now. Are we rebelling or are we accommodating?
Very good point. I think that definitely speaks to Mr. Ford's point of the mass information, or the overload rather of information, where people don't know where to go, what to do. Democrat, Republican, slavery, global economics. That confusion breeds that complacency. But as you said, there have been serious things to deconstruct and break down our community. And as you brought that up, it made me remember another historical point during Reconstruction. Here in Louisiana, where I'm coming from, and I had not introduced myself. I am Glenn Kyle Jones. My company is Feather Fund NOLA. My family, we own the largest Black newspaper here. My grandfather started 58 years ago. My father still runs it for the last 35 years. And I do documentary and historical documentation of our community before the Louisiana Purchase. With that said, please refer to me as Kyle. So in this point of Reconstruction in New Orleans, when out of slavery, most of the elected officials in Louisiana were Black. Pinchback was the governor, and what was started was a company called Comus. Comus runs all the parades here for Mardi Gras. They were comprised of three gentlemen: Judah P. Benjamin, John Slidell, and Albert Pike. And if you're historians, you know Albert Pike was part of the Masonry, demonic, and so forth. These three gentlemen started the Civil War. They started Comus, and the way that they deconstructed our elected officials then, what they used parades and floats. This was pre-CNN, pre-social media, and they went through all these different towns using entertainment to make fun of. This is where you started getting the Black man with the watermelon. All came and stemmed from these practices of breaking down our community as a whole and then pitting us against each other. This process brings us to understanding how incarceration has affected us in the community. But I want to raise the question of, we have representation, the Congressional Black Caucus. What influence on incarceration and on our communities do you guys believe that the Congressional Black Caucus, which was brought in to represent us in this nation, the effect it has had?
I mean, I can say directly to my community, most people don't even know what the Congressional Black Caucus is, let alone what they do. So I will say zero. I believe it's a lot of talk, because even though, you know, all respect to, you know, all the representatives that been there, but the representatives from my district, Al Green, Sheila Jackson Lee, they haven't passed bills in 30 years. The most relevant bill that they passed was the Juneteenth, which was here recently. So at the end of the day, they have been less than effective for our communities. They just been, again, like you say, just representatives or talkers, because they definitely haven't passed no bills or anything that helped our community. So when you go that deep, yeah, they haven't been representing too much of nothing. So if that's who they politicking and talking to, I don't see what they have gotten passed. And unless somebody tell me something different in their state that they feel like their congressperson or something is doing, please keep me involved. But I definitely can't speak to any.
I'll be blunt. I find them to be completely useless, except for a boat ride and a party in September. You know, just for my business, I do a lot of, I did in the past, and I will again in the future do a lot of work with the federal government, because they're the biggest buyer of goods and services on the planet. So I interact with a lot of folks. Even before the activism, I was interacting with all these people. And I find that unless you're greasing somebody's palm, they don't respond, at least in my district. And I'm in South Carolina, and District 6 particularly. It's funny. I get more done going to the other side, and I don't mean the white side. I mean, from a business point of view, the Republican side, I get more done, which you wouldn't think it would be that way, but it is. That's what I find, and maybe they listen because no one goes over there. Maybe that's why. And I mean particular people. I don't mean all of them. But the Congressional Black Caucus has lost its way. And by the way, they've tried to bury what happened in 2020 and won't even respond to it. Gives you proof of they're not listening. And I think this last couple of days, I mean, when this is broadcast, people will have a much better perspective on this when this show is broadcast. The last couple of days, the fact that we're getting a lecture from the former president, it shows that they all are clearly blind of what's actually going on. Clearly blind, and it's like, you know, you can't make what do they say? You can't lead a horse to water. Is that what it says? But
you can't make him drink.
You can't make him drink. You can lead him to water, but you can't make him drink. And I think it's I believe, particularly with the Congressional Black Caucus, since that's what we're talking about, they're going to have to suffer such a huge loss to make them listen. And I think that's what you're about to see happen. I mean, and when this is broadcast, we'll know, you know, but I think you're about to sit, when we talk politics, you're about to see that happen. And perhaps as long as we're there, kind of like when that buck comes, you know, I'm an old hunter. So when that buck comes out, you got to be ready for him, and you got to be listening. You got to be ready for him. And when that happens, we can jump and take advantage of that and use that to our advantage.
Anyone else has any thoughts on Congressional Black Caucus and their effect in our community as we're dealing with this mass incarceration and destabilizing our community?
I guess, you know, because I'm trying to stay consistent in recognizing that we are structurally in a racist power nexus. I mean, and those who go into into that environment, they are going definitely in the power in the snake bin of power. And as Black men and women, and I don't know to what degree, I don't have that interaction with them, but the assumption of the structure being what it is, and hearing what those white congressional leaders do, I just know that they're in that. But I do have severe criticism. In 72, that 72 convention, to take it to there, they split from, again, you know, when we had the opportunity to be on one accord in relationship to an agenda for Black people. And I know the generation that's here now and it's not those that were there, but they set the precedents in the sense that they decided not to be the leadership or part of the leadership of those who were, whether they were nationalists, Pan-Africanists, communists, you know, community people, all came to that convention. And that was the beginning years of that Congressional Black Caucus. So these two elements for me, that they decided that they were going to split from them based off of our agenda, and then going into a structure that they would have to fight, as, you know, in the conversation of being Black men, you know, having, and all of them didn't demonstrate that. But as a body, what I see, and this is where I'll end, that they don't do, that at least they can do. They can be advocates. They may not be able to move through into their states, the resources to Black people, but I don't hear them make no advocacy as past generations. You mentioned about, in Louisiana, and that after Reconstruction, those political leaders were not only did they be able to utilize that structure under a more hostile. Them Southern crackers was serious, right? But they were advocates, and they were able to work until they created the militia to stop them. Today, these guys aren't even advocates of the needs of Black people, knowing whether we look at the wealth indicator, whether we look at the imprisonment, like what is it that we need to do to overcome and be inspired to do? At least they can do that with their bully pulpit, like the preachers used to do with their bully pulpit, and they're not doing that.
It's Bobby, you had your hand. Sorry, I missed you earlier. Word.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right, Benjamin. Let me introduce myself for those, a few of them know, everybody know me. Bobby Worthy, I'm the former National Minister of Justice for the new Black Panther Party, also former state candidate for the Georgia State Conference, president for the NAACP, and also the Judge Advocate General for the Justice League United organization I founded in 1998. Some of the stuff that we talked about are good, and I mean, it's good talking and preaching and talking about it. But we're looking out the outer side, not looking at the core. And I always tell this to everyone. And until we start having accountability at any level, accountability or at any level in anything you do in life, there can be no effective changes. And we have to look at the core reason, not the only reason, but it is the core reason of the destruction of the Black man, woman, child, and family. And it is the rap music of today that is the core destruction of every Black neighborhood, every Black youth, and it's now filtering down to the white folks. And this is what we got to change. And if we change the mindset of our people, now I ain't saying nothing wrong with rap music, and you 14 and 15-year-olds, you start listening to this stuff because your mind is in adult capacity. But when you're 3 and 4 years old and you're letting your child listen to bitches, hoes, and niggas and all that, and every word, when Mr. Farrakhan said it best, we are truly in a mental state of slavery when we don't know it. And even I do it, but I'm getting better at it. It's calling my brother the N-words, and we're accepting the N-words as a word of respect and honor. Not only are we accepting the word as a word of honor and respect, we are calling our Black women B's and H's. Not only are they accepting being called B's and H's, they're accepting so much they're calling themselves that. I'm the B you don't want to mess with. I'm that H you want that. And all that comes from rap music. Nicki Minaj. You got all the children. You see this? I got 2 15-year-old kids in jail now for gang affiliation for this. We see grown men and women, grown women doing this. This is not a peace sign. This is a gang sign. And when it doesn't become a peace sign is when the white folks say it's not. And then you're going to be locked up. But we're comfortable with our little girls dressing like hoes, excuse my language, wearing stuff that's showing the very verbiage of their birth canal. And we're comfortable with that. And where does all that come from? Rap music of today. It is destroying the mindset of our children. And until we change that, nothing is ever going to change, because unity does not begin in the gathering of the bodies. Unity begins in the mindset. And wherever the mind is, the body will follow.
That's a very interesting point that you bring up. And as a moderator, I'm supposed to keep it moving, but there were some very interesting points that you made that I must speak on, because the title, of what we're dealing with is how we are, as Black men in high places, how the slander affects us. And we're talking high places, so we're talking intellectual, we're talking people that are understanding. So let's dive into this two things. First, Negro, nigger. I would like to give some historical reference to the word nigger and what we need to understand about that word and how it is in our community. First of all, it started in Spain. The word Negro is the product in which was sold to the British, which is you and I that are here. That's why we're called Negroes in America, because it was the Spanish word. But that did not come from the Spanish, and that was not used as a derogatory term. It was a term by a gentleman that coined it in the 1100s, I believe 1125, that is Yahya Ben Negro. Yahya Ben Negro was the first one in history to be known as the word Negro, and he put this name, he grabbed this name, took this name as a symbolism because his lineage came from the royal house of David, which meant that he was a Hebrew. This was a title that they used to decipher themselves from the Lancados and a couple of other people that were in antiquity. So just as a historical reference to where the word Negro, nigger comes from, and yes, just like most things in our community, it has been infiltrated and culturally appropriated by Caucasians and have been given a derogatory term to it. But historically, it is an actual badge of honor. I am happy to be a nigger. I'm also happy to call myself a Negro, knowing that my lineage goes back to King David. So next with the rap music. Rap music is Leo coin. It is 5 corporations. It is the corporations that run our society. If our community only rapped about positivity, it would never be on the radio. We must have that understanding that neither artist has the control to put themselves on any radio station. I don't care if you're talking about Cash Money or Master P that came from my community that I know well, that paid, just like James Brown did, payola in order to get on the radio station, but you get to a certain level. That is why we have the Diddy of this day, because African Bombada was the Diddy before there was a Diddy, and you had to go through a certain bid scenario, casting couch, whatever you want to call it, to ascend into that area where you are producing and promoting this rap lyrics that have degraded our community. Rap music is the propaganda stick in which our oppressor uses us. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to go to a deeper level of actually where where it comes from. It's not us. We have to take a moment and step back and realize that we have been under captivity, still in captivity for the last 400 to 500 years. We have not controlled the printing press. We have not controlled anything. The first newspaper in North America was done by Haitians, not by North Americans, but by Haitians, and it was done here. Now the Tribune newspaper. And today that is represented by a white man as a descendant of a Black Haitian started newspaper. So let's understand that we are in captivity and that we are talking about how we as Black men can break these stereotypes through knowledge, through understanding, and understand that slander, such as the word nigger being culturally appropriated, the slander that we receive in our hip hop music, the slander that we're getting from the Congressional Black Caucus when they do not represent us in our communities, and they have not been advocates, as Mr. Richards said, that we are definitely at a position where us as men and Black men in high places have to rethink everything we've been taught. That's where, as a moderator, that's my 2 cents. Everything that we think we know as a community and as a people and how we're going to go has to start with rethinking and with morals at the base of that. Now, let's go to cancel culture. Our next piece is...
Let me respond, man.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. I mean, what you said is good about history and all that, but history is that they use that word to degrade us. They use that word to kill our ancestors. And we may used to own it. We may have a history of it, but now it's derogatory and it's destroying the mindset of our children. And until we take that away from our children, ain't nothing going to change for our people.
But he's telling it from the royal house of David that they are the reason for being, for everything that is happening globally, from Israeli to Palestine to the cultural appropriation, because when you, as a community, know more or know better, you do better. When you realize that it was made a derogatory statement and someone else took your identity in that process and is waging wars in that, and that your tax dollars are supporting that entire system that's in there, the more we raise our consciousness, the more I believe we'll have more people that understand exactly what you're saying and agree with this panel and get our community on the right path. We want to go to cancel culture and see how cancel culture has affected us on high places. Of course, we have to speak about Cat Williams starting out the year, because that has seemed to be the falling of the so-called upper echelon of society for as music and entertainers and what we see on TV. So we want to examine what particular, how has that affected general Black men in high positions, this cancel culture.
And I will say this, I think when it comes to cancel culture, you know, we can look at everybody from Bill Cosby to R. Kelly to Diddy to everybody. I just think it just started to, I don't want to say erode our power as a people, but I think the Black men that are up there, that I don't know if they, I can't say how effectively they really use their economic base and what they're trying to do. I think they could prevent, I'll put it like this, it's always things that people can say about us that's, you know, that may not be true, especially when you get to a certain level. But I think people with money, if they did enough on the ground as dealing with the people in the community and the people that we really deal with, they could eliminate a lot of that stuff. But I think through being disconnected from not only the real culture of what's going on in Black communities, I think they can't really effectively navigate some things, even when it comes to our community. So do I think it's right? No, not at all. Do I condone what they do as in some of the positions that they get in? Heck no, I don't condone that either. But I think the problem that usually people have is telling the truth, is being truthful. And I think us not having that right communication between each other and not holding each other accountable. And I tell people all the time, I support a lot of our brothers. I watch everybody from 19 Keys to Dr. Umar. And I think a lot of the problems that these guys have is lack of male accountability in their life. And I think if they had that real person that could really tell them the truth, I think we would dispel a lot of this cancel culture, because you will have people telling you, hey, man, hey, check that from the beginning. And I think we don't really have that in our community. And we haven't had that self accountability with each other as men. And without having that, then if you don't want nobody telling you nothing, and I had a friend and I told him about himself one time, and he said, man, I'm not going to be coming over your house no more if you're going to be trying to chastise me. And I told him, hey, that's a decision you got to make as a man. Because if you my friend, one thing I'm going to do is tell you the truth. Like Dion say, you may not like it, but it's the truth. And I think that's how we have to operate as a community, as men, holding each other accountable, as well as elected officials. And I think at the same time, the reason why we can't hold certain elected officials accountable or other people, other races accountable, is because first, we don't hold each other accountable, and other people see that. And we seem like hypocrites to each other and to other races when we talk about all this stuff that we could be doing, but other races see us going on 3 vacations a year, traveling this, traveling that, and we not handling our place in our own community. So people don't respect that.
I definitely agree with that. If people don't see us whole other, if our children, going to what Brother Worthy said, if our children don't see, our young men don't see us holding other people accountable, who holds these reins in relationship to like the entertainment image, it ain't just that we produce the product, it's that the industry who determines what products will be able to be put in front of us, that we, sets the basis of our image that will become that we would reflect whether we're canceling or not. If we're not going to those, the industry leaders as men, and saying this stuff, I don't care if you got $2 billion to give them, you ain't giving them nothing because of the effect that it has on our community. That there is where, if we're going to get to the root, and if we demonstrate that as men, then it seems to me that those young men will have some kind of model to where we want their imagery to where they can get to say, because what we're seeing is that they're canceling people through the entertainment industry and making money off of just that back and forth. So they still make money off of the imagery of doing that. And that is where we would be as responsible. We have to say, not necessarily just to the young men and women who are watching this, who are getting paid by this, but going to the people who are distributing this, who are giving them the money to do this, who are regulating, that say, well, we don't want that. We want this. And we're willing to pay you for that. And we're willing to pay people who be leaders, make them billionaires so that they can perpetuate this. That's what it seems to me.
Do you guys think that this cancel culture has made our community not revere our leaders or our spokesmen, so to speak, in the community?
To be honest, I think we had a gap in leadership. And I talked about this the other day. I'm 36. I didn't see any leaders in my school from elementary all the way through college. Nobody came to my schools. And that was, you think about it, after Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and everybody, it was a gap in leadership. So I think we had about 30 years of no real substantial men really stepping up that we know of. I'm sure it was people in their own personal communities and pockets of cities, but nobody had really stepped up, or they haven't showed anybody to that degree that stepped up to that level, because students, they see me at every level from elementary all the way through college in my organization. So I feel like that's something that's becoming back. But I think for a long time, we had a gap in leadership after a lot of people. And I talked to a lot of people around those baby boomer age. And a lot of people say they killed our leaders. And a lot of people, I think, went and just kind of lived their lives after that. They went home, lived the American dream. And I think that's when they made it easier for people to get houses. In my neighborhood, most seniors bought their houses between $30,000 to $50,000. Now them houses worth between $500,000 to $700,000. Just a property with no house on it these days in my neighborhood is worth $100,000 to $200,000, depending on the square footage. So I think they kind of made people's life comfortable, and we kind of went to sleep. Kind of when Obama first got elected, we didn't give that same due diligence we need to, I guess, our fight. That's just my 2 cents.
And if I may, and we haven't, when you said, especially when we look at, when I hear, say, your generation, because it's supposed, those people of the boomers, as people say, they made a decision to put themselves in front of the cameras and whatever in order to be considered the leaders. Today, the Black press, the Black now influencers, they should be the ones that be putting themselves or directing themselves to people like you and like Brother Kenneth and like Brother Glenn. I mean, they the ones that should be coming to and saying, oh, we're going to make you the image of what Black manhood should be. But they're not.
With social media, they don't need us. You don't need the work. Social media is like a shortcut to most people not going to say 19 Keys and other people are not doing anything because they're not doing nothing. So you can't speak to other people. So, it's, and I like those brothers, but I tell people all the time, when you think about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, we have to have a home base at where we doing our main work. Where do we live? What communities support us? Outside of just being national and international. I'm sorry, my fault.
you brought up a very good point about the gap. And as we're talking about the cancel culture, the last one that you said, Martin Luther King, and as Mr. Worthy is representative of the Black Panther Party, what they did was teach and educate, right? And when they went through the entire civil rights movement, that's the 30-year maybe gap you may be talking about. And in that time frame, you had, I guess, a lot of people that rightfully so scared to step up and speak. Everyone was getting assassinated, not just Black leaders, but Kennedy as well. So you had a moment in time where they were killing anyone that was speaking about righteousness and equality in this country. That was a form of cancel culture. As Mr. Richards said, with the social media, and as you were speaking again, the social media with this cancel culture, I want us to take a look at this 30-year gap, or 40-year really gap, maybe even 50-year gap, right, of the leadership, and has cancel culture in different forms morphed to make sure that we don't get a leader. And this new age cancel culture on social media, just another trend in canceling our leaders from being able to speak.
Nobody gonna answer it. Yeah, I think it definitely is. I think you gotta find a way to quell. I think with social media, kind of like you say, information overload. We just entered into the noise. And like I say, I posted a video the other day that had Diddy in it, and it got I want to say it got about 600 comments. It got about 3,000 likes. It got about another 1,000 shares. Then the next time I posted about Cornel West, it got 16 likes. So in one share. So we got to know, again, it's clickbait at the end of the day. But how are we using this clickbait? I think we have to start trying to, us activists, I know RZA gets canceled a lot. We have to find a way to use this social media platform, but at the same time, remove our supporters from this platform in order to organize in a different way. And I feel like that's what we kind of doing successfully in Houston down here, is not only are we using social media, as it's socially, but we using the social to get people aware in the now and what really needs to kind of happen, as long as leading with the solution. So, and that's kind of what I try to lead people with, practical, everyday, how are we making change, everyday change within our communities. And sometimes that goes with as simple as changing some ordinances, which we're doing in my community right now.
That brings us to the last part of that, and that also works with the comment that Mr. Bobby Worthy put in our chat. As you're saying, what you are doing in your community to change that narrative on social media. And as he says, we must transform the prevailing mindset of our society. Until then, meaningful change will remain elusive, making this shift the essential solution. I totally agree. So what, as you're saying, what things can we do, since social media seems to be the new platform, is where they're canceling people in the open, rather. What can we do to counteract that?
I'd say start with two things. First, there's a concept that people have forgotten about. I don't think anybody on this panel has forgotten about it, but I think a lot of people in our community, particularly our young people, I've forgotten about it. It's called shame. And we're all older than 18 years old here, but I remember listening to my first Eazy-E record, 1988. And I was 15 years old. And I put it in the Walkman. I walked out the house, and I still remember it. And I walked all the way to the end of the driveway and listened to it on my headphones, because I didn't want my father to hear me listening to it, because I knew I wasn't supposed to be listening to it. Because it had, I knew, so I had shame. Yeah, we've had a lot done to us. This isn't like a bash us. This was done to us. But
Yes.
how are we going to get it back? We have to introduce shame, and you're going to have to start calling people out. And then the other thing is, as we do that, a lot of these people that are getting taken down, they're getting taken down to say, see, look, that's what you guys are. I just, this was your representative, and I just took them down. We have to, as we go out and stand up on our own, you never know who's looking at you. Every time you go out, however you dress, however you present yourself, make sure you present yourself in a way that when that young person is looking at you. So when I go out and I wear things and I do this and I do that, I do it for that young person, that that 12-year-old that may see me, who might say, well, what does that guy do? And I don't, it's not, I'm not saying I go out and wear suits or wear gold chains or do anything off stage. Just all those things are perfectly fine. But you don't know who you're affecting, us as men, and us as you say, men in high places and high places and principalities. But we've got to bring shame back. We've got to bring pride in yourself and accountability, and not afraid to say to somebody, hey, bro, that ain't a good look. Now, they might get mad, and you might have to deal with the blowback and all this and that and the other, but, you'll have to deal with that. But that comes with the ticket to admission. But we have, and there's a lot of these young people, they're looking for it. They're absolutely looking for it. And they're not getting it from the music because the music's not designed to give it. The music used to be. It used to be. And we have to get back to that and elevate those people. So I'll stop there.
I'm going to just piggyback if we're going to move forward. And this is still piggybacking with what we were speaking with Bobby Worthy. It's going to have to be accountability. As we want to change the upper echelon, it's going to have to start at the base. And my example for that is, as we use Diddy, and I'll use Mr. Umar Johnson. Mr. Umar Johnson came on and exposed a certain aspect of the Diddy situation and said, they're trying to take down yet another black man. To me, we have to move way past that because I don't believe there's any accountability in that statement. If we're going to do, as Mr. Canty said, which I think is the solution, whether it be on social media or directly with your friend, your cousin, your brother, your sister, your mother, that accountability of saying, no, that's not right. And that Diddy, doesn't matter if he's purple, there's morals in his character. And even if he looks like me, if it's wrong, it's wrong. And that accountability or shaming or whatever how that comes across, I do believe that is the basis that will bring about a collective consciousness. So as we go from there, we are moving to our next part, which is historical context. How does the historical legacy of racism and discrimination shape the current experience of black men in high places? Not us that's dealing with it every day, but men that are supposedly in the Progressive Black Caucus or men that are in entertainment. And before I give you that, I want to say that there is a clip of Malcolm X, and this kind of goes back to what Mr. Ford said as far as our leadership is concerned. There's a clip that goes around that Malcolm X is being interviewed, and he said, what other community does the leaders or the entertainers? What other community is the singer, Nat King Cole, called upon to settle the dispute of a community, or Denzel Washington, or anyone? I think that's a very poignant for where we are right now. So the historical context of what discrimination and racism has done to men in high places, black men in high places?
Well, and me reacting to it, the thought comes that about how this whole thing of what's this diversity and the DEI, right? And that seemed to be directed to those in institutions, whether they be corporate institutions or I mean, as far as black people, black men showing concern. And what I'm trying to make the connection is that the system of controlling black people is permeated up and down. And it's our not acknowledging that and understanding the systems that have to be put in place to protect ourselves from that is really the maybe from one generation to the next, or maybe we aren't really totally, as a people, convinced that the system that's put in place, that we started in this discussion around the 13th Amendment, where it included slavery. They didn't have to include that, right? And it was directly for those who were enslaved, that part of the Constitution. So those men who constructed that rule recognized that they had to put in place that part in order to maintain the integrity of the system. Well, when we talk about men in high places and the historical context, even if we just start from there, when we talk about how long did it take them to be able to get into corporate America? What did it take for them to get into corporate America? How long? What when we look at the generals today, what did they have to go through? How many generations before you even can be considered a general? And still, when they put in front of the Congress and they're grilling them, I don't know if anybody's seen the clip. I think it was Austin, and that congressperson was grilling them, and the image of, well, I don't, like catching them. How does that reinforce that no matter what level you are in this system, in relationship to the image we're going to project about you, you're still powerless, right? That's something. If I'm touching, the heart of your question, for me, that's because the system itself and the people, and when we talk about system, like Malcolm said, well, when you talk about government, what are you talking about? You're talking about people who are in places, positions in that. That's the system. Those people who are in those positions, and who are primarily them, white men. So it's on us to recognize that the construction and the social order has not changed, but it's not that we can't navigate, because we have. Is that we have to be able to always create better defense mechanisms to protect ourselves if we want to engage in this system and move it either out of the way or transform it so that we can move more. The next generation can be more easily without the harm to their minds and their feelings.
I agree totally. Anyone else have anything?
When you move, when you move through this system that we find ourselves in, you have to be like stainless steel. Nothing can stick to you. And even with that, when you're that, where they'll come after you. And what I found in my experience was they're fine if you're making money and you're just worried about yourself or worried about your family. That's why they don't go after. That's why there's tons of ball players. They make plenty of money. And a lot of them do good things. But the ones who speak out, like Kyrie Irving and some others, they went after him. And he was actually, he was helping. I don't watch basketball, I don't watch it at all because I just don't find it very interesting. I mean, nothing wrong with it. I just don't find it interesting. But when he started speaking about what he was speaking about, it got my attention. Then I started paying attention to what he was doing. But when they come after at least the business owners, it was when they start to help their community. Remember the brother who at Morehouse, we said all of y'all's debt is paid. At Morehouse, yes. I can't recall his name. Robert Smith.
Robert Smith.
Robert Smith. Yeah. Then a few weeks later, he had a big IRS investigation and all.
There you go.
Yeah, I was like, "Whoa, what a coincidence! What a coincidence!" And I know for me, everything was just fine until, and I did this early on when I started reaching back to those black schools and bringing them kids and said, "This is how you can tell behind me. I build bridges and do things like that." When I started teaching them, this is how you can do it. This is how you can make $100,000 a year inside of 5 years of graduating from high school and not have a college degree. But you have to know these steps. This is the steps you have to know. And a lot of them were like, no one ever told us this. I said, well, that's why I'm here. And that's why I was sent to tell you, because someone told me. So I'm sharing it with you. That's when they start coming after you, when you start affecting change in your community. And for me, I'm glad it happened when I was in my 40s. So that now in my 50s, I know what it looks like. And like Brother Richard said, you've got to armor yourself around with systems and with people in place. And going back to what Brother Ford said a couple conversations ago, you have to have people around you. And you might not think they're friends, but they're your best friends who will slap you if you look like you're going down the wrong path, or tell you that's not you've got to have somebody around you like that. And you might not like it, and you might go in the corner and sulk, but you're going to realize that they were right. And you've got, and as people, whatever you're doing, I'm sure Lloyd Austin, he's got an aide that tells him consistently, General, you're wrong about this. Well, why am I wrong? Well, here's why you're wrong. And just looks at him analytically to tell him those things. And for example, for somebody in his position. But we have to have people around us like that. And it's not even a matter of it costing something, because your friends will do it for free because they're your friends. You got to have people like that around you in your organization, whatever that ecosystem looks like.
You kind of answered part about the second part of that, which is, as we're talking about this cancel culture and in high places, the influence of the economic pressure. And I was going to ask, why do we see a pattern of criminal and civil lawsuits targeting Black politicians, entertainers, and athletes, especially during pivotal moments in their careers? You already started to allude to the reason for that. Anybody else want to chime in or help answer why these things are happening at pivotal times for our people?
Like I say, go ahead, boss.
Go ahead.
I would just say, just 2 cents on the corporate thing that I jumped to. That, just to kind of let people know, my same corporate experience. One thing I had to realize is that the same attitude that rose me to the top was the same attitude that they were using to hold me back as well. I've even been told one time, don't dress up to work so much. Like, everybody is dressed down. Like, why are you dressing up so much? And I'm like, they're just, I come to work looking good. That's what I do. And the one day I came dressed down, everybody was in 3-piece suits. And I was like, never again. But kind of like, to your point, I think it's pivotal at the point too, where, look at a lot of the celebrities these days, all their lineage is actually doing something. Majority of them are not criminals, whether that be sports athletes, rapping. They really passing their generational wealth on. And I think a lot of that is just, they want to disrupt and they make it easy. And I think when somebody like Diddy or anybody, of course, I'm not saying he's innocent in no type of shape, form, or fashion. I think he just kind of participated in the system that was set in place, and he thought he had enough money in order to kind of play that game. I really and truly think that Diddy thought what he was doing was legal because he was paying for it. But at the end of the day, that don't make it right, because that's a game that they've been playing. But I think we have to realize there's other ways to attack us, and right now, economically, is I think that more fashionable way. And I say that I think that's because I think in our generations, we haven't really seen, even our parents, we haven't seen no real world changes. But I think we are about to now, dealing with our currencies and how we spend money and how we interact with technology. So I think it's about to become real pivotal now on how we use our economics and how we can kind of boost that to the next level of whatever is going to transform into.
It is economics is the carrot or the oppressive mechanism that they have used here and abroad. The Francophone dollar in Africa, everybody wonders how Africa can still be so poor, and all of the minerals come from there. Well, when the French are buying all the raw materials in a dead currency called a francophone, because they don't use that currency anymore, then they sell it on the market for 3 times that value and turn it into a euro. We have to understand that the economics is the ruling oppressive stick, and their dollar is the stick that they have used. So when we're looking at this influence of economic pressure, it has been here since sharecropping. It is how many of our families lost their lands here through sharecropping and that process of economics and new economic systems that's brought in. When they sue our politicians, our athletes, it is also a way of scaring everyone else that's standing behind them. So if a Kanye can lose $2 billion, right, from no longer being with Adidas, then it makes the next person wonder, and then the contracts become even more steeper. So the money becomes a controlling factor on our community. So we can see that influence in it. What can we do to shake that? If there is something that can be done to shake that level of oppression.
Well, the first thing you can't do is you can't throw in the towel and give up, no matter how bad you want to. I know for me, and I'm speaking from the business point of view, and infrastructure contractor and construction, and I can tell you when I came after, I'm in the low country of South Carolina, Charleston. When I came after, it took them several years to do it, and while it was happening, I could hardly believe it, be honest with you, but they picked some particular times to do it where it just looked like a bunch of coincidences. But when I go back and I think, and it's been several years now, when I go back and I think, what could I have done differently? Or, you beat yourself up. I mean, you really go through a form of PTSD on it, where you're beating yourself up. I should have done this. I should have done that, and this, that, and the other. And then you realize, wait a minute, if it was so easy, why hasn't somebody else done it after I got knocked out? Well, because it's not so easy. And a unique set of circumstances, no matter what you do, a unique set of circumstances got Sean Puffy Combs where he was. I mean, just in terms of what we saw as a success. A unique set of circumstances got Bill Cosby where he was. A unique set of circumstances pulled all of us on this call right now. So when you go back to go back and you go back to the, as they say, go back to the lab and say, okay, what am I going to do differently? You've got to take a hard look in the mirror and do that debrief and look, this happened before. Okay, man, I like steak dinners and I was going out too much. So you know what? Let me not do that. Let me cook at home, and that'll keep me away from this. Because all these situations that you get yourself into, there's always a point where you said no where you said yes and you should have said no. You can always go back and do that and say, I should have zigged where I should have zagged. Okay, what am I going to do next time? But you've got to formulate that plan, keep those around you who support you, but you've also got to know who you are, and you have to have a spiritual backing behind you. Whatever that is, and that's for people to pick what that is for them. But you've got to have that behind you, because you're going to get into places where it's only going to be you, and you're walking in that room, and you need something to get you out that room. You've got to have something bigger than yourself. You're doing this for bigger than yourself.
I would say this: we talking about economics. I add this, some of the solutions that I'm doing kind of in our community, and one of the programs we own, we have one of the businesses is we own our own credit card systems. I don't know if y'all know about the POS credit card system. Every time somebody swipe their card. So down here in Texas, we have something called a Texas the cash discount program, which anybody, when you go to the gas stations, if you pay in cash inside, you don't pay the fee. If you pay with your card outside, you pay the fee. And that's how we start using it. So instead of those fees going to Visa, MasterCard, all the stuff like that, it comes to us instead. And we use those fees to start kind of redirecting back towards community. That's one way. The second way is I realized a lot of people, when you talk about business owners, entrepreneurs, getting money, I couldn't go through the credit game, didn't work for me. The SBA and all those other programs didn't work out for us as well. So, but what I did learn was from a lawyer, Ms. Deborah Jordan, was the C Corps. So I showed people, she taught me about the C Corps, how to raise money. And what we did is we raised $100,000 just using the PowerPoint. And one thing I realized that we're lacking is a lot of people was bringing me PowerPoints, but nobody had projections, no numbers. I call it all passion, no plan. Because we have the passion of the business. It'll be a 20-page thing with a 20-page presentation with not one number in it. And I'm like, how do you do that? There's nothing but passion right there. But I realized what I started doing, we started teaching a class called Business, Politics, and Money, and teaching people not only the correlation between business, politics, and money, but also what it takes to maneuver between all these different entities. And sometimes if we really looking for change, as myself, I thought I could just be a business owner. Then I realized just having money wasn't enough. If I had the money, now how do I transform my community? Now that took a little politics, because I can have $1 billion and can't build a sidewalk because the city won't approve it or won't let me or whatever it may be. So I think it's so many ways in seeing how, and I tell people everything is political. How you get your water is political. How you get your electricity is political. As we know, Flint, your water is very important. So I just think through these things, we have to come up with different new economical scenarios to aid our community. And one of the biggest things in my community is not having enough commercial space to put businesses, even if you want them. So guess what? We start going on and we change. I wrote a new ordinance. Now it's going through city legal to now not only challenge people that have empty buildings, which is over 30 just on 3 streets within Houston and our community. If you're not trying to rent it, lease it, sell it, have an open permit with the city or utilities open, we tax you. And what we're trying to do is now, how can we utilize these funds and put it back towards the community as well? So that's the second fold of that plan. And also dealing with the convenience stores, gas stations, and also finding them within our community that allow people to sit outside all day, sell drugs, loiter, because in our community, you have to call in order for the police really to come remove you. But I hear they see that as a layer of security. If Pookie and Ray Ray sitting outside, nobody gonna come rob them from the community because you know everybody. And so these things and spaces we trying to eliminate. And the reason why we going after these places, because hopefully we can incentivize somebody to sell, that now we can get more ownership of the property within our community. So we building real estate funds in order to take advantage of these things as well. So I think it goes so many different folds of what we're doing, but the ordinances are something everyday change that we can do. And like I said, just between 5 miles within 3 streets, we got about 49 to 70 nuisance properties and abandoned properties. And that's just, that ain't even one district. That's a fourth of a district. So these are ways that we effectively just dealing with the economics in our community just right now. And trust me, I can go on about so many other programs we got, but I think that's the meat and potatoes of just an example of just some everyday change that we can be making in our communities when it comes to economics.
You know, one thing, my mind said, I commend you guys, all of you, because you're really hands-on the ground and doing it when we're talking about, the what you're engaging, the business, the actual community development, and even having a legacy family business that you're being consistent on. I guess that I'm saying that because I guess I'm more abstract in relationship to economic development, but more that being about building an economy. And it seems that if we're a people, we have to be about building an economy. And as a people, from the perspective of sovereign thinking, we have to determine, well, what is the natural resource that we have? And in my abstraction, the natural resource, the only natural resource we have is ourselves. That, in a capitalist order, they say human capital. And I don't think that we recognize that. And we said it's about education. And we earlier we had the discussion even about the values. But if we're talking about that's our natural resource, we're talking about building our economy, that's the primary thing that we need to develop as a part of our economic development. And all of those, as you said, Brother Lloyd, the politics of that, right? Politics, and the business of building people, the skills. Brother Kenneth brought up about just in passing information can increase the value added of one person to where they can see $100,000 based off of the skill sets they can produce. If we say that our economy is focused on building that human capital, instilling those values, providing them with the skills, then that, and being able to create the network where they they don't go to someone else, but they're being, relayed to from our own center, that increases our economic development, because whether you call it labor or whether you call it entrepreneurial development, it's done by individuals. And if we are letting other individuals do that development, then they get the benefit to where they can pay them so many millions of dollars, or give them access to resources that make them $1 billion. And as we've seen with one person, they can give you $1 billion and take almost $400 million in a day. In a day.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, when we're looking at from the perspective of building an economy, we're looking at building our economic development. We're looking at from the perspective of what is our natural resource. On the ground, we got diamonds in our own backyard. And we should be focusing everything to get those, compose those to where the value added and be uncompromising. We can't have no schools, no schools that's dilapidated, no daycares that isn't really developing with the certain value systems and the certain skill sets. No pipeline that is disconnected, even if it's trade or entrepreneurship. That can't exist, because that is how our wealth is built, by developing that human capital, that natural resource. Hopefully I made some sense.
Hi. I want to say that I think that you guys have done a great job thus far. We have been focusing on the Black in high places, right? And the things that they should be doing, the things that have been affecting them. And I think that we've had a great discussion and gotten to what things can be done, not just citing the issue, but what things that can be done. But that was all from the leadership perspective. this question is, what do you think our community can do to support those leaders that are stepping up? Because I believe Kenan is a leader. I believe Lloyd's a leader. I believe Shahid. I believe that Richard. I believe that all of us that are here have been working in our communities as trying to be leadership or be a voice of reason or bring some change. What can the community do?
I would say this as a leader perspective, and this was a mistake that I made early. Just so you know, as a full transparency, I think we talk about the successes a lot, but we don't talk about the failures enough. I would say this: when I was having a meeting, we had a lot of people coming. My mistake was let's just say 70 people came to meeting. I didn't have things for 70 people to do. And I think it was like a come in here, Lloyd, report what he doing in the community type of thing. And I think we have to do more, not only including more people, but getting people that want to be ideas. And it's tough. I'm going to say that because I tried having, I'm going to open up this committee, that committee, that committee. But committees are founded by leaders that know what they want to do. So just coming up with a name and saying who want to be over this committee, to me, to be honest, that has never worked for me, or any other organization that I've really seen where people are not getting paid. And you have to not only give your time, but your intellectual capital. And I realized that in order for us to move, I had to have a section or a level of the plan created. And then when we come to the meetings, we're kind of critiquing and what we're doing and doing. So we had to come up with, like people say, your 4 pillars of things or 3 pillars of things that you really are passionate and working on, and let people bring their own intellectual capital or things that you feel like you can expand. But I kind of go with the philosophy, like they say, keeping the main thing. And my main thing is economics. So I'm always, even though I have the driving organization, my main focus is economics, business building, outreach, and getting more people involved. And, we have other people that come in and fill in the gaps when it comes to education, the reading programs, reading intervention, so on and so forth. But I think us as leaders, whatever we plan to do for our communities, we have to have a level of the plan created in order to give it to them. Because what I was doing was asking people that came to the meeting to get direction for direction, and that never was going to work.
I'm with you, but what I want you to give me, in the scenario that you set up, you got the community that comes. The leaders have set out the outline. What does the community need to come in? What attitude, what mindset should our communities come into these programs, these leadership, these educational things, these economic upliftment? What mind state should our community come in? Because we have to understand, as we pointed out, what has been happening to our leaders as far as disinformation, misinformation, being attacked, financially attacked. That's happening to the people as well. The leaders have made it a conscious decision that I know what I'm going to do to change it. Now you have the community coming in, still influenced by everything they hear on Fox, everything they hear on CNN, everything they hear on the radio, everything their mama and daddy said. What this is important because we have a lot of people watch this. And a lot of people always want to point the finger at what the leader should and should not do. We've dealt with the leadership. What should our community, what mind frame should our community have in knowing that they've been dealing with this slander, knowing they've been dealing with this marginalization? How should they come into programs like yours and mentorship like Mr. Kenneth? How should the community come?
2 things, and I'll pass it on. Come in with an action oriented mindset and accountability, willing to take accountability for not fulfilling what you say you're going to do. And I think that's a big task. Like you say, we all feel like we want to do something, but we definitely don't want to be held accountable for doing something that we feel like we're doing on a volunteer basis. So I think if you're going to come in and you really want to help and be a part of changing what we're doing, be willing to put in the action, and be willing to be held accountable. And I think that goes both ways, holding the leadership accountable, like as you say, but also holding people accountable that's coming and giving their time. And I think those are 2 biggest things that I see as being in a position that people kind of need to get in their minds.
follow that, utilize that leader that has been put in front of you to develop your own leadership initiative and your own leadership style. Don't just sit there and say, yes, 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 yeah, we'll follow you, preach, brother, this, that, and the other. Take it and say, okay, I'm taking that back. I'm taking that spark. You sparked me. I'm taking that back here and doing this here. And then you're going to do that for somebody else, because at the end of the day, we all have to lead our own little units, our squads, our fire teams, our platoons, our regiments, our brigades, our battalions, our divisions to get this whole thing where it needs to go. But you've got to step up. You can't just watch him do it and then watch him get destroyed, and then you say, "Oh man, what a shame." I'm like, well, if you had stepped up there with them, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Because a lot of these folks who get rocked, it's because they were all by themselves. You know, and I don't mean there was nobody around. I mean, nobody was standing next to them to make sure when rounds were coming in, something was shooting back. Both, you could take that figuratively or literally, but you've got to stand up. And as what warms my heart is when somebody comes up to me and says, you know, I remember that speech you gave this time. It just happened a couple weeks ago, and man, I did this with it. And then I grabbed this person. I took them with me on this because that one thing you did inspired me to do this. That's the one thing I needed to hear. Don't. Inaction is the killer of dreams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to act. You gotta have action.
Wait, I'm sorry.
You gotta have action. You gotta move forward.
A lot of people don't realize that, you know, you'll look at a leader and say, you know, that guy had a great plan, or that woman had a great plan, and they were going, and I don't know why did it fall apart. It was the infrastructure that supported them. The people that were supposed to do certain jobs and do certain aspects, and when those people fall apart, the plan fall apart because it takes a village. We all have to understand, and that's why I wanted to talk so hard about what the community has to do, because the community is always looking for a leader. And I want us to know, as we talked about the attacks that happens to Black men in high places, we really have not had a short of men wanting to step up. We have had 50 to 60 years, as Mr. Lloyd Ford and I pointed out, of direct shooting and killing of any leaders, and you know, COINTELPRO, as they said, for quite some time to deter any of that, but it has never stopped the spirit. So the disconnect is between the leadership and the community. How the community sees our leadership. Does our community believe in its leadership? Does our leaders believe that the community? Because I've heard many leaders say, well, you know, my people just can't. So we can understand that there is a disconnect there. So what we pointed out here in this discussion, as we are coming to the conclusion, that we understand that how we've gotten here is through the penal system, through incarceration, for the labor force that was needed to build this United States. We understand through that was the social engineering that permeates throughout all of our culture, that is not controlled by us, but actually is purported by us. We have gone to the fact of understanding that our leaders, such as the Congressional Black Caucus and politicians, have failed because they're in a system that has no intentions on actually helping us. We have looked at the fact that the gentlemen, Black men in high places, no matter how high they've gotten, there's always been a, so to speak, string that has can be pulled from underneath them, or a rug, so to speak, pulled from under them. So as we have gone through that and got it down to the fact of, in order to change or to any of those things that we just discussed, that we have to have accountability. That we have to have accountability, not just in the people that we see on the screens or the people that's entertaining us, but amongst ourselves in our family unit, in our tribe, in our unit, right? So as we discussed that, we said, well, how do we do that? And you guys have put forth that one, we must have the moral accountability, and then we must have, as Mr. Floyd brought out, we must economic systems such as the cash discount, the C Corp, as well as the self-educating, which I, out of all things that are said here, I think we have not touched upon that. We should probably have a second panel on this, on the fact of our community self-educating itself, because that's a major need in order for us to be able to move forward. I think we pointed out enough things, the social engineering, the education system, to understand that our way of thinking and our so-called education isn't always working in our benefit, and that our talents and developing our talents would be those things that would benefit us. And in doing that within the community, we've just come to the point of understanding that the community itself has to have an open mind to its new leadership, to understanding a new way of doing things, to coming in ready to work, ready to put in action to a plan. And that leadership has to meet halfway with the semi-structure, but allow the community to bring its input, its inspiration, so that it is also 100% behind it, because as we all understand, these things won't be paid for in the beginning. And that the change that our community needs, we as a community can't be looking for to get rich off of it. We have to understand that there is a long-term goal in connecting in these multiple communities and in doing this grassroots effort to change the trajectory of our community. So with that, we take it to our last part here, and understanding that, you know, one of the biggest things that we have to do in that self-education is this panel right here. And again, we want to thank Tamar Singleton, the Afrodescendant Nation, and all that have participated in bringing this discussion. And that we need to have this discussion more and more to bring about that raise of collective understanding and intelligence that we need to move forward. So as we talk about our communities and the communities needing to be able to work and have accountability when they come in, I also must ask that our community have patience. Our community wants things to be immediately like they have at their job. Right? To have the corporate structure, federal funding, all those great things that keep so much in place, and understand that every leader and every community person that comes in to help in this is going to have to wear more than one hat. And humility and patience is the only way that we can build it with the understanding of morals and ethics, because that is not what our society has put forward, and that would set us apart and allow us to create that legal tender, that organization within our communities, and the foundation in order to move forward with. So as our last and our conclusion, as we just did, we want to emphasize the need for solidarity and support for our Black men in high places who are often unfairly targeted, and to encourage open dialogue and action to challenge the narrative surrounding Black masculinity, and to advocate for justice and equality for all of our communities. With that said, gentlemen, is there anything else you guys would like to add that we did not touch upon, or in my recap that I may have missed that you want to highlight? Please, the floor is yours, gentlemen.
I just want to add, you know, for all of us, and we, you know, to continue to be able to demonstrate, and I definitely, as it relates to the community at large, that we can win. That, you know, to have the regardless of how you come in or where you came from, especially us as Black men who have went through that, we can win. And the we is and that we have continued to develop that consciousness of victory. I would like to just offer that.
You know, what I'd like to leave you with is the activism community and the business community have always been linked. They weren't all, and now we're at a point where, you know, I can't tell you how many, and I'm in both worlds, where people, oh, I just want to have a job. I just want to make my money. I'm like, well, what do you think what's going to happen? Who's going to be there to protect you when they come for you? Making sure that we're watching each other's back, no matter how we're advocating, whether it's through economics, whether it's through activism, whatever it is. But we've got to stick together and find those commonalities and work together on those commonalities.
I mean, one thing I would say is, I think all of us have to find a way, I feel like all of us are some way, shape, and form, of course, involved in our own separate communities. And I think the success that we can have in our communities are going to be based on how well even ourselves and us could work together. And I think we have to find ways, us gentlemen, as in us on this call, have to find ways of working together as a level of understanding what we're doing. Because I believe, if we can't do it, I think that sets another precedence in people's mind, as in when they don't see us working together so much, as in our own people. So I think we have to find ways to work together and create something on another level that we can all participate in and kind of cultivate and just show. I think these days is beyond just talk. We have to show a representation. We have to show something that we're doing and show something that we've created as a grassroots. And I think for the past, I think when people see activism or thought about activism, they think broke. And I think we have to change that narrative of what activism is. And we can be activists at the same time, be business owners, be about our money, be about our, being corporate, and learn how to play those roles, and be where we at. And I tell people all the time, I don't need you to do what I'm doing. I'm doing it. Sometimes I need you where you are. Yeah. So if you in that job, in that city job, like, man, I'm tired of working for the city. I'm in the planning department. I don't like what they're doing. No. I need you in that planning department. So I think sometimes we have to realize where we at. And I tell people, utilize people for what they want to be useful for. And I tell people, use me all the time. Just don't misuse me. And I think we have to be useful to each other. In the moment we stop being useful to each other, instead of worried about being used, I think we can get to the next level. I hear a lot of people that used to bring me their businesses and say, yeah, I don't want nobody to steal my idea. I'm like, your idea isn't anything yet. So until we make it something, at my beauty supply store, we had over 100 Black-owned brands on the shelf. Out of that 100 brands, in 1 year, they did $100,000. Out of that 100 brands, only about 20 brands really carried the load. And out of that 20 brands, only about 3 were ready for extra investment to the next level. Because most people, even though they was making money out of our store, they couldn't tell you what the difference between net and gross. So I think we have to start with just understanding what we're trying to do and what we're trying to build. But I think, gentlemen, we have to work together because we see a lot of Black women working together on another level. But I think us as Black men on this level, we have to find a way to work together and create something. And I think that starts with trust.
I agree. Do you have anything, Mr. Richard?
I think you gentlemen have said it all. I was like, I say.